Welcome to Vital Perspectives, and I thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Dr. Marwin Spiller, and our guest today is James Gilkesson, the funeral director of Simon's Mortuary. And we're going to talk today just about the business of funeral homes and the challenges of grief, mourning, and all the issues that his business entail. Also, we're going to touch on the notion of what it means to be a businessman here in Peoria. And so I want to start out our conversation, just a brief history of Simon's Mortuary. It's my understanding that Simon's Mortuary was founded by your aunt and uncle, Raymond and Thelma Simon. They founded this business in 1956.
That's correct. Uncle Ray went to school at Worsham College, class of 1947.
Mm-hmm.
And then he worked he worked in Chicago for a couple of years, and he came to Peoria and worked with Mr. Hazelwood at his funeral home here in Peoria.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1956, he went on and started his own, along with his wife, Thelma.
Okay. So you got really it's 3 generations now with you taking on the business.
That's correct, yes. My mom and dad came in once my Aunt Thelma passed away, and now my sister, my wife, and I run the business now.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to continue to serve the community, and it's an honor to do that.
Okay. And there are not a lot of black communities in Peoria. How would you define or explain your success in that you're celebrating your 60th anniversary? So you've been here for a long time, whereas a number of other businesses have not been so fortunate to survive. I mean, how would you explain that? Is your business model, your approach?
Well, my Uncle Ray and Aunt Thelma believed in and set their mark for distinctive service. And,
Mm-hmm.
and also from talking to a number of people who worked with them years ago, they really believed and had a heart for working with people.
Mm-hmm.
Coming here since I was a kid, I would always see my Uncle Ray and Aunt Thelma,
Mm-hmm.
working with families. And they just had a love for the people,
Mm-hmm.
a love for the community.
Mm-hmm.
They always supported community events, always supported the different church events. And, I even hear of kids in the neighborhood that would always come, when nothing was going on and just get candy from my Aunt Thelma.
Yeah.
So, they just had a heart for the community. In all communities across America, a lot of black businesses have kind of gone to the wayside.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that may be, the fact that we get our hair cut at a black barber,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes we still go to a black funeral home in most cities.
Mm-hmm.
But now you can go out to eat anywhere.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
we tend to need to keep continuing to support
Mm-hmm.
our own businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, but we've been lucky that we've been continuously getting support of the families. And like I said, my aunt and uncle and my mother and father stressed to us to treat each family like they're your family.
Mm-hmm.
And give the distinctive service that we can give.
Yeah, and I would imagine that's extremely important because you're dealing with people, families at their most vulnerable point. I mean, the loss of a loved one,
Yeah.
loss of a friend. I mean, and so you're really dealing with a lot of pain, a lot of emotions at a time when they need that support.
And you almost become a part of a person's family.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife has lost her dad, her brother.
Mm-hmm.
I've lost my dad, my brother, and my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And even though we work in this business, we need this business as well. Someday I'm going to pass.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The support and nurturing and just understanding that you can give to a family, because sometimes you're almost guiding them
Mm-hmm.
through this process because it's so emotional that you're numb.
Mm-hmm.
A good friend of ours, fraternity brother, videotaped my dad's service
Mm-hmm.
and the visitation the night before.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me maybe 2 or 3 years before I could look at the video.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was, I don't remember him being there. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
You're so numb, you don't really even notice a lot of things that are going on. And so what we try to do is just help assist the family in, making decisions and giving them things to think about, almost like having, this cousin who's going to help you. And we're not trying to take advantage of anybody. We want to just be there to let them make decisions. And maybe you need to think about this. Maybe you need to think about that.
Yeah.
And when you do that properly, when it's done with the utmost respect for the family, that family comes back time after time.
Yeah, and one of the things you mentioned off camera was that you get the importance of the community and then helping people through that process.
That's true.
And given the realities that our community has changed, from even 10 years ago, our community is not the same. And certainly we go back 20, 30, 40 years, the sense of community has changed. But I get the sense that from your perspective, there's still a strong sense of community here
yeah, definitely in Peoria.
that supports that.
Yeah, definitely in Peoria. You got strong churches that give the support. Sometimes I know even some churches, when someone has a death, they start bringing food over to the house. I know even we're members of St. Paul, and I know they have a special ministry dealing with when a member has a loss. So different churches do various things, even the repast after the service. Sometimes a lot of churches provide food. In some cities, you can spend $2,000 or $3,000 feeding your family after the service. For a church to provide that for you, that's huge. But just the nurturing that the community gives allows you, because I know even for myself, you're numb through that period, and you need to be nurtured by the community to support. And before I lost a loved one that close like a dad, I was working in the business and going through the motions of trying to support people. But until you lose somebody, like we were talking earlier about the commercial, where now you're in this spot now that you really understand. And losing my mom, losing my brother. I lost my best friend from second grade all the way up. The guy I could call every other day. When you lose that, it's easy to start. Your life can start going in different routes. But when you get the support of your family, your friends, your community, that helps you stay focused. I quit smoking years ago, and when my brother passed, I started back smoking. And one of my friends saw me with a cigarette, was like, "Man, what are you doing?" But he just helped me realize, I'm going through a thing about my brother's death. I'm a funeral director.
Yeah, that's interesting, because one of the things that concerns me, as a sociologist, trying to explain, what's happening with our young people today, and in our communities where we experience seems so much death, so much untimely death. It seems that a part of that, perhaps, is that people are just not grieving properly. When you take up revenge as a form of grieving, that certainly just spews more death. When you don't take the time to really engage your feelings, then that's gonna come out some other way. Certainly there's a strong community, but when you don't take advantage of that community because your grief is just so strong that you feel the best way that you can get over this is taking it out on someone else.
And sometimes it's even taking it out on themselves. Drug abuse, alcoholism. I know District 150, even some of the outlying communities, when they have a death, they'll provide some counseling. But sad to say, a lot of times we don't believe in it, but sometimes you do need counseling. And it's needed. It's really needed. And you got to look at it. When I was 14, 15, 16 years old, like I told you earlier, I had a friend when I was in the first grade to get hit by a car and died. We had a classmate that drowned. That was it. nowadays, you take the average 14, 15-year-old, they know at least maybe 7 to 10 people
Mm-hmm.
that have either been murdered or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so that you're just dealing with a lot more at a younger age now.
Yeah.
And do they do enough counseling? We need to have more counseling available.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we need to pull kids more involved in different activities, church activities,
Mm-hmm.
Boy Scouts.
Mm-hmm.
All these things can, help. Even the fraternity, the things we try to do, the things the Alphas have done. Kappa's with the
The classic
man,
Mhm.
and other things you've even began to work on dealing with the police.
Mhm.
We need programs, and we got to put time into,
Mm-hmm.
getting the kids busy,
Mm-hmm.
because the real problem, and that's what my mom and dad always told us, idle mind is the devil's workshop.
Yes.
And when you have idle time, especially when you're in a bad place anyhow, you lost somebody, you're just sitting around, and then kids are bringing, other distraction to kids. Oh, just try a little, smoke this or drink this.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's disaster.
Yeah. Now, do you ever think about, have you challenged just personally, emotionally in your soul almost to see things that perhaps your aunt and uncle, when they first founded this business, perhaps would never imagine? I mean, the effect of so much death on young people, the effect of seeing so much pain in a different way.
From that perspective, has always been, as a funeral home, as a professionals, just being there for the comfort, doing our portion of what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a grief counselor.
Mm-hmm.
My wife's not a grief counselor.
Mhm.
We're funeral directors,
Mm-hmm.
and we also do pre-need. My wife is a licensed insurance agent.
Mm-hmm.
We try to get to the people that we can. We try to speak at churches whenever we can, do seminars. We're trying to line up some seminars about prearrangement, about being prepared.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what we can do.
Mhm.
We've also worked with the coroner. Once we did something at Manual where we had right before the prom, we did a mock funeral, or a mock really accident, and then we came on the scene with the funeral coach and picked up the person, and the kids acted it all out.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of kids came to me afterwards and, woo, man, that really, brought the point home.
Yeah.
So we're always available to come out and speak, and we spoke at Velasca Hinton, and numerous churches. So a lot of it is engaging the community. Years ago, it was almost unprofessional for funeral directors to go out and kind of talk to people, because it was looked at as if you were trying to solicit business. Now it's more informational. We're not necessarily trying to solicit business. We're just trying to get people the information,
Okay.
so that they can have insurance, so they can be prepared, so they could do things, because you have a couple of families pay for a funeral out of their own pocket without insurance. That's setting that whole generation back.
Yeah.
So and then also just some of the things we get involved with is just telling people about, don't be afraid to go to the hospital, to get things checked out,
Yeah, we still, as a community, wrestle with that. We're gonna let's take a break. Let's pause for a commercial break, and we'll come back on that very topic.
Gospel Peoria. Tune in Saturday nights at 7:30 on Comcast Cable Channel 22. Watch revealing positive information with various topics, people, and arts. Also, be sure to visit our Gospel Peoria TV Facebook and YouTube channel, where you can watch show segments, information, and updates about the program. That's Gospel Peoria TV on Comcast, Saturdays at 7:30 p.m., Channel 22. Now that's television with an innovative touch.
We're back with Vital Perspectives. Again, I'm your host, Dr. Marwin Spiller, and we're here today with James Gilkesson, the funeral director of Simon's Mortuary. And right before the break, we were talking about just the levels of preparation that some of us have and some of us don't have with regard to that very uncomfortable conversation that we all going to experience, and that is death. And certainly this sort of brings to mind a conversation I had with my own father about that preparation and just the discussion of a will and just how uncomfortable that made him feel. And given that you've been in this business for a long time, do you get the sense that people are growing more comfortable having those conversations?
Some people are. Culturally, it's just, been a thing where we just don't like to discuss it. But that if you're that person in the family that, okay, you have the viable means, that doesn't mean you should be the one paying for everybody's funeral.
Right.
Let's get together.
And that happens a lot
together.
in our community.
Yeah, let's get together and get some insurance. It's when you don't, that sets a family back. And like I said, it sets a generation back. But when you are prepared.
What's the average cost of a funeral these days?
Average cost of a funeral is running anywhere between $6,500 and $7,500. And sometimes that's not even including a grave liner or a vault.
Wow.
Then you have cemetery costs. But when a family has come in and done a pre-arrangement and taken care of everything, have peace of mind, it's paid for. It's paid for, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. When we were 20 years ago, your average car was running $15,000, $20,000. Now the average car is running, $40,000, $50,000.
Right. So
when you pay in advance or you make your preparations and you don't have to worry about it, then that's a financially, a fiscally great thing to do for your family. That's a good gift for your family that is taken care of. And so we're able to be. We were all going to pass away at some point in time. Do we want that to come out of our insurance that we have? Do we want to pre-arrange it directly with the funeral home? It's all kind of options, but when a family has to come up with the money themselves, that's, like I said, once again, that's setting everybody back. And then especially when it's one person that has to do it, that's setting that one person, that one individual back.
Yeah.
But
and I would imagine that caused a lot of rancor within the family too.
Sometimes you do have a lot of families work together and put money together to get it going. But when that happens, a lot of times you'll also see people starting to say, "Well, I need to come and get all my arrangements set up," and then that's why we go out to churches and give seminars to try to give people information. To see what they can do to make their decisions. There's certain things people do with their employers to, make sure that once they retire, they still have benefits.
Right.
And some situations there's not going to be any benefit once you retire. So while you're in these productive years, let's go ahead and make a plan to get this paid off right now. Get that set up now, and it's just good planning. It's just good planning. It's difficult. But everybody in our age range, and I'm probably a few years older than you, but you have to almost be invasive with your parents to say, listen, what do you really have? Because you can back away from that conversation with your dad, but it's going to have to be done. It's uncomfortable, but somebody's going to have to know what's going on. And culturally, we have to begin to start planning for, these type of situations to be able to hold on to assets. We discussed that a little earlier. A lot of things are changing, dealing with nursing homes, dealing with public aid. If you don't do the proper spend down of the funds, too many times in our community, a nursing home can end up, you have to make payments for that nursing home $5,000-$6,000 a month. That's going to eat up all the money that could have taken care of the different things that could have been taken care of, or a family could have put certain monies in different, family members' names or names on the accounts. There's so many things that you could do ahead of time.
Right.
That allows us to pass on.
And that certainly got me thinking that sort of piggyback on a conversation that we had, that part of the conversation earlier, just in terms of your own family and the business of Simon's Mortuary. I would imagine that at some point your aunt and uncle have to make the decision that we need to pass this on to family. Right. So that involves some kind of preparation. Right. And if we're not having the conversations about wills and insurance policies for burial, are we having the conversations about passing down our businesses, passing down our homes?
Yeah, exactly. And one of the first things we learned, both my wife and I went to North Carolina A&T State University in Greensboro, North Carolina. That's where we met. And we were both business majors. And the first thing you learn in business is a business is an ongoing concern. That means if you build up a great business, it just doesn't die with you. It continues to go on. If you write some music, that music, once you pass on, you have to leave where you want those royalties to go. Because one of my mom's good friends ran the Van McCoy music. Van McCoy is out of Washington, D.C. He wrote The Hustle. Okay. You still hear The Hustle.
Yeah, I know that song.
Yeah, that song is, but he also wrote a couple of songs that Luther sang. You know, some of those songs you could be making $100,000 a year off just one song, the royalties. And then you're pulling royalties from Europe, from all over. So, and he died, unfortunately, years early in the early 80s or either the late 90s. Early 80s or either the late 70s. But his music continued on. Yeah. And that's like business. It continues on, and when we have these businesses in the community, we want to make sure that they outlive us. Yeah. And that's a big part of having those discussions. That's a big part of us working together to pass on and build wealth within the community. Right.
And you have to be prepared to take on those businesses. You have to make sure that
education.
Education, experience, and exposure.
Exactly.
And that means you have to prepare, have those conversations.
Conversations, also just reading materials. When I graduated from college, my mom gave me a book by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. She gave me a bunch of books, but that was one that kind of gave you a discussion of how you need to build a mastermind group of people, even some of them not even being alive. In my mastermind group, I had a cousin that, she always told it like it is. Yeah. And when I go through any situation, I would always say, well, what does Big Sis think? What would she tell me? Because she would always tell me to, straight from the gut what she felt. Yeah. And sometimes when I want to hear that, I can go back just in my own little, prayer room and think, what would she tell me in this situation to do? Yeah. And so through that reading at 22, 23 years old, it helped me understand if I want to go into a business, I need to have the specialized education. And so it's something that's really needed to, kids have to utilize. We're at ICC right here. This is a great resource. I'm even thinking about coming over here and taking some culinary classes just so I want to get to be a better chef. Yes. And that's something that I learned and picked up from my dad. He went through college, and at our community college, when he was maybe 70 years old, he was still taking classes. Wow. So it's education is something that is needed in whatever you're trying to do. And I don't think we understand it. We all sometimes think, I have my bachelor's or I have my degree, from high school or whatever. Education is always ongoing. As a funeral director, I have to constantly go to get CEs, which are continuing education, to keep my license up.
Right.
Because things change and we have to be able to change with it. So,
Yeah, it's all part of running a business.
all a part of
Yeah.
running a business. Is
Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
Now we have a little bit of time left, and I don't want us to end this conversation without you talking about something that was very interesting. We talked about it off camera, and that is this camp.
Yes.
Can you tell me about this camp?
We refer a lot of people to the camp. It was this October 1st. So it comes each year in October.
Okay.
A camp at Methodist for children, I think from 5 up to 18, 19 years old that have been involved in grief.
Okay.
And the kids come together. They get to play with other kids who've gone through and lost a loved one as well, and sometimes it helps them relate to one another. We over the years we've been referring kids for the last probably 8 to 10 years. Really, the community needs to bring together and do more things like this, because, like you said, we have so many more youth that are have experienced a loss.
Yeah.
Friends, loved ones. So some of the schools, some of the high schools could put together like a service of remembrance or something.
Yeah, because that's one of those things we don't see enough of those outlets.
Right. Once the service is over, and the community needs to do a little more. And I know some of the high schools in District 150 is giving a lot of counseling, made it available. But I just think it would be great if the community could do more things. Maybe some of the churches come together and do some counseling for kids. And there are a lot of programs. That's some of the programs. Some of the churches have for the youth. Those are good things for them to get involved in, because, like I said, once again, the idle mind, that leads to nothing positive.
Is there a cost for that camp?
No cost.
No cost. Okay. Well, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, one
your
other
story.
thing I'd like to just insert, if I could,
Okay.
is we have every year a holiday gala.
Okay.
This year is going to be December 4th, and that'll be at the Civic Center.
At the Civic Center?
3 to 6, and we invite everybody out, and it's just a community event, no cost.
Okay.
People just come out and enjoy.
Okay, great. You heard it here. Well, I thank you. This has been Vital Perspective, and I'm your host, Dr. Marwin Spiller, and our guest today was James Gilkesson. I thank you for joining us.
Thank you.